Right, this video is to describe the Capstone project and all of its parts. Hopefully you've got the printout in front of you. If you don't, you might want to pause this and go print that off. It's a PDF. Should be the link right below the link that got you here. And we'll talk through all of these different parts and what we're going to ask you to do this quarter. So the first thing you need to ask yourself is whether you're talking about a system or a study. So think about what it is you're going to be doing in your Capstone project, and hopefully something you've been working on all along. You want to know whether you're talking about a system or a study. So a system usually ends up being some kind of a thing. So like I say here, if you've been thinking about, hey, I got a new idea for a simulator for resuscitation training, then that's going to be a system, because it would, if you were successful, it would result in a thing. Even if it was a prototype thing, it's still a thing that you would have to get built into systems that actually got used in practice. On the other hand, maybe there already is a resuscitation training system and you're not sure whether that's actually doing anything, and your idea is, I've got an idea how I'm going to study this thing. I'm going to determine what it's actually going to do. So that would be a study. So just think about what it is you're proposing and what end you're actually going to be on as you think through this, because it matters in a few places where whether your system or study might change what your deliverable actually is. Now, our end state for this whole thing is we want to have a ready-to-go proposal for funding. Not that you have to do that, but the idea is that you've kind of thought through. You're all experts in what you do already. Now you've just spent a year thinking about being experts in modeling and simulation to some degree, and now we want to bring those two things together. Think about, what do I know about modeling and simulation? What do I know about business practices? What do I know about government acquisition? I want to put all of this together. What do I know about medicine and healthcare, of course? And I want to bring all of this stuff together and be able to put together a pitch that a resource sponsor could actually say, that's what I'm looking for. I want to fund this. So that's our desired end state. So there are 6 projects. There's an optional 7th. We're going to call it Project 0, but hopefully you'll at least consider it, because it's pretty important. You'll see it in a minute. We're hoping that this is going to build on some prior work that you've done in some other courses, but doesn't absolutely have to. Don't worry about if there's things that you've done that you don't want to leverage. That's okay. And this ought to be a shovel-ready project, ready for funding. And most importantly, don't save this whole thing for the end. I'm giving you some deadlines along the way. They're not hard deadlines. If you're a few days late or whatever, don't worry about it. I don't take points off for that, but you need to have the whole thing done at the end of the quarter. That's the hard deadline. So don't worry about that, but at the same time, don't blow it off for the last 2 weeks and then think you're going to get it done well, because you won't. There's a lot of work here. So Project 0 is what I call resource sponsors. There's a link to a wiki. It's actually just a Google document, not a real wiki, but we can all edit it. And what I want to ask you to do is to think about who might sponsor the sort of stuff that you're thinking about. What's the organization? Do they have a website? Do they describe what their mission and interests are? Is there a particular program, like a program of record, that maybe you would be plugging into? Is there a particular point of contact, a program officer, program manager you might that you might write to? What is their contact information? Any other notes that you can tell us? What are they interested in? Do they have a past history of they like to see government cooperating with industry, or government cooperating with universities, or these are things that are useful to somebody who would write a proposal to them. So that's Project 0. Optional. There aren't really points associated with it, but I'd like you to think about it, because we want to grow up this wiki a little bit, because not everybody knows who the resource sponsors actually are. Then there's Project 1 as your requirements. Well, you could have the really coolest idea in the world, and it's not going to ever see any funding, and it's not going to see the light of day if it doesn't fit into somebody else's, who has resources, view of what they really want to see done. So you need to be able to look at, I've given you a bunch of example documents. They're usually like strategic planning documents, maybe things from the strategic study groups, things like that. that think big about where, in our case, what is the future of medicine and healthcare? Where are we going in the future? I hear about this telemedicine thing. We want to use all these, we don't want to use trainers. We want to get trainers out into the field. We want them out of the schoolhouses. These are things you might be hearing people talking about. And if they're talking about them, then you can maybe link your idea to what they're saying. And you got to be kind of creative. You're making an argument here. Don't expect somebody to actually put in writing that they want exactly what you want to do. That's very unlikely. You'll find things like these science and technology objective documents. The Marine Corps does that. The Army does something similar. Air Force does something similar. Should be a half page, but you got to give me a hook that we can go on. If you've got no place to go with this cool idea of yours, then it's going no place. So come up with an idea of how you can take somebody else's words of where they say we're headed and fit your idea into their worldview. That's what we're trying to do. If you can't do that, nobody's ever going to even flip to the second page of your proposal. They're just going to pitch it and say, that's not where I'm going. Okay, Project 2 is what we call the Heilmeyer Catechism. And this comes out of DARPA. I give you a little story on where this came from. But it's just, I've always found it a good way to think about big programs like this because it hits a lot of the obvious questions that anybody who has to justify their resource expenditures is going to want to be able to answer. So you got to answer it for them because you're asking for resources. So the first thing is, what's your problem? And you might also think of this as the backbone of the whole set of projects. So the first question is, what's the problem? Give me an idea what the problem actually is that we're trying to solve here. Or maybe if you're doing a study, it might be a knowledge gap. Hey, we don't know how to do this thing, and I got an idea how to figure this thing out. So tell us what that is, and then tell us how it's solved today. Even if how it's solved may be atrocious, that's okay. Tell us what it is. To give us state of the art and what's wrong with it. Then tell me what's the new technical idea. Somebody's going to ask the question, how come you're so smart that you've got this idea that you want to do this? Were you telling me no one's ever thought of this before? Well, probably what you're going to say is, no, I've got a new idea. I got a new way of doing this. Or here's a really cool thing that just there's this new invention and I'm going to leverage this, or a new capability. Explain to us what the new technical idea is, and explain if somebody says, why are we going to succeed now in this when we didn't before? Because even if you just told me and how it's solved today that it's really crappy, okay, it's really crappy, but what and how is it that you're going to make it better? So explain that. Then talk about if you're successful, who's going to be impacted by this? What's the benefit? If it's just sort of a nice to have, somebody's going to say that's nice, but I'm not going to spend money on that. If you can put dollars on what this is, you're a rock star, but you might not be able to do that. But give your best guess at who's going to be impacted and how much. Hopefully in a positive way, of course. Is your idea disruptive? You're going to learn about something called disruptive technology and see how all that fits together. And if it is, who's going to be disrupted and how? Is it going to change the way we do simulation or some piece of business? How's your program going to be organized? Now, don't go too far in this because we got a whole project 4 that's really going to go in great detail. But just give me a little paragraph or a few sentences of how you're going to do this and how it's going to be put together. And I talk about listing the major milestones. But that's actually the next one too, which is how will intermediate results be generated. So you got to have intermediate checkpoints. So if you're talking about a 2, 3, 4 year program, your sponsor is going to want to be able to check in on you and say, are we on schedule? Are we behind schedule? Is it looking like this is going to pan out or it's not going to pan out? Where are some decision points that they can put to you to be able to evaluate your program? And how are you going to measure progress along the way? That's important. So what are the metrics that you're going to use, not just where the milestones are? And then lastly, how much is this thing going to cost? And here we're just talking ballpark. Is this a $10 million program? Is this a $1 million program? Is this a couple $100,000? What are we talking about here? Some projects that we have are $50K. I don't need much at all, but I got to figure this thing out. So tell us what that is. Next, you're going to do prior research. This is sort of your background. This is it expands Heilmeyer parts 2 and 3. Step number 1 is going to be your background. Give me a short synopsis of prior work. You're going to be building on top of other people's work. What is that other work? Tell me what it is. If you're doing a system-related project, then I'm going to want an analysis of alternatives, because we're going to be building something. I'm going to want to know that what are the things that exist out there that are related to what you're doing, and why am I not buying that? Why is it not good enough? If you're not doing a system-related project and you're doing a study-related project, then you probably don't want to do an analysis of alternatives, but then I'm going to want to see a deeper background. Go a little deeper in your background. Tell me what else has been done in this area that you're going to be building on top of. This is a snapshot of what the analysis of alternatives matrix looks like. You're going to just provide me some options, what the functions are of those systems, what their costs are. You might do another a comments column that talks about maybe tell me why we're not going to use this, or maybe we're going to be using it as part of your solution. Remember, if you're doing a study-related project, you might not do this at all. Okay, now we get into Project 4, Work Plan and Budget. First thing you're going to do is what we call an architecture. Now, if you're doing a system, this is a schematic. I want to see what the components are. I want to see how they fit together. I want to see if they're going to talk to each other. You're going to be moving files from one place to another, or there's protocols between them. Just loosely tell me how it all works. If you're doing a system-related project, then this is actually more of a flow diagram, and it's going to fit right into your outline. So talk about what are all the things you got to do. I got to build a prototype. I have to recruit subjects. I got to get my IRB paperwork done. I have to get this approved by the CEO. Tell us all the things you got to do to be able to make this thing happen. Step number 2 is going to be your outline for your POA&M. You're going to lay out all your tasks, maybe steps, tasks and subtasks. Lay it all out the best you possibly can. Next, you're going to do your milestones. Remember, we already referred to this. What are some decision points that we're going to have, and where do they fit into your plan? Then we're going to do a timeline or a Gantt chart. I want to know how the tasks and subtasks relate to each other, which things have to happen before other things, which things can happen in parallel. I want to know next how these things are prioritized. What things you may have some things in your POA&M that are, I'd like to do this, but if I don't get to it, it's okay. You may have some other things that if I can't get this done, program's dead. Tell us what they are. Lastly, I want you to say something about workforce. What are the skills that you're going to need? Are you going to need some engineering? Are you going to need some physiology? Are you going to need some medical expertise? What are you going to need to pull this thing off? What are those skill sets? Because this is going to go into your budget, which is your last thing. When you fill out your budget, you're going to be able to have to say, what are the skill sets that I require, and approximately how much am I going to need, and what's that going to cost me? So the way this looks is something like this, where you've got tasks and subtasks, and you lay all this thing out. Here you see in the blue columns, I've got quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3. You might want more granularity. You could do it by month, you could do it by week, however you want. And the way I do it is I just fill in the box and I shade them in, so you can kind of see the lines that this first task number 1 is going to start in quarter 1 and extend into quarter 2, but task number 2 isn't going to start until quarter 3, and it's going to go to quarter 5. You get the idea. And lastly, you're going to lay out a budget. Looks something like this. You can modify all this stuff however you think you need to, but fill it out the best you can, because if you don't have decent numbers on this, nobody's going to give you a second look. And to finish up, we're going to want to see a transition plan. How is it that this is going to transition? It's great that you do all this work, but who's going to pick this thing up when you're done? I want two sides of this. I want government, so I want to see like a program of record. Who cares about this thing? This should go back to the beginning when you talked about requirements. There's probably some shop someplace that is going to want the answer, either the system that you build or the answer that you provide from your studies. Who is that? Tell me who we're going to transition this thing to. Or I should say, and I want to see step 2 would be industry. Very often there's companies that would be interested in your results. They produce products that are something like what you're doing, and they want to see the results of your study. Or they produce products that are like the product that you're going to be building. Maybe they can commercialize it. Maybe they can take your product that you intended to be built for Department of Defense, and they can commercialize it for the civilian health industry. Who is it? Who are these people? Let's name them. And then lastly, you're going to wrap all this thing together into a final proposal. And don't just take all your parts and staple them all together and say, I'm done, because that's that's not going to make any sense. Remember, this is something that should be a shrink wrap proposal ready for a decision maker to see and fund. So write me a little abstract, have a decent title, lay out your objective. You're picking things out of your other projects, but you shouldn't be doing a lot of work in this project, but should be doing a lot of reorganizing. Lay out your background. This is from Heilmeyer question 2, and also your prior work, your prior research section. What's your approach? What's your work plan? I want to see what your deliverables are going to be, and I want to see your budget. And the length is going to be dependent on what your previous work is, but this should be a legitimate proposal. No kidding, that you could hand somebody and they could say, I can fund this or I can't. And that's really where we're going to be going. So that's a description of all our different pieces. Again, for each of your projects, the size of them are going to be different depending on how it is you laid it out. So I give you deadlines for all the projects. They're not hard deadlines. The only hard deadline is the end of the quarter. So pace yourself accordingly so you can get it all done at the end of the quarter. That's the only deadline that's hard. Other than that, if there's any questions that come up along the way, you're not quite sure how what I just described here fits into your project, please say something, and I'll help you to figure out what that actually is, or we may modify things for you. That's fine. I'm totally open to that. But I want us to kind of walk through this whole thing. The only thing that I'm really hard on is that we get the end state of a full set of full proposal that's coherent, that we could hand to a resource sponsor, and that hits all these wickets. Let me know if you have any questions. Other than that, please don't wait till the last minute, and ask along the way.